Hi, I'm Greg Frazier of Air Syndicate. This is K-Daddy and D-Bob of Cal Concepts, and we're here to introduce you to the third part of the 3-video series on automotive airbrushing and custom graphics. This part is airbrush graphics on custom helmets.
Alright, today we're going to be painting helmets. Most of the time when you get a new helmet, probably a customer or something wants you to paint, it's going to look something like this. It'd have stickers on it, which have to be removed before painting. Normally on these plastic bills, they're real flimsy. The stickers on the plastic bills are usually just put on. Back on the helmet itself, they're cleared over, so it'll be a little harder to get them off. On the bill, you can just peel them off. You won't have any trouble. With the helmet, you want to sand all the color off, the logo, everything. You want to sand it off with 80 grit, probably just by hand. Since it's a round surface, your hand won't really wave it out, so you wouldn't have any trouble. But it's got to be completely gone or it will bleed through when you decide to paint the helmet. As far as on these bills, the best way to get paint to stick is using Sim Flexible Primer Surfacer, and it's available at any paint store. And you have to sand these with 400 grit sandpaper, then you use that. It'll work to an extent. I mean, if somebody wrecks and the bill goes like that, the paint's going to come off. It doesn't matter what you use. So normally if you have a flexible bill like this, you'll want to use a design that basically one color's on the bill only. So if you have to repaint it, it won't be a big deal. Once you sand the helmet with 80 grit, you want to go back over it with 220 grit to kind of smooth out the 80 grit scratches. And once you go over with 220, you'll take it to the primer stage. This is what it looks like when it's primered. It'll have a few nicks and scratches that you can fill with this. This is a red, it's PPG spot putty. It's used for filling minor scratches and chips. It's just kind of a finishing surfacer. And then you can sand the red spot putty with 220 grit also and reprimer the spotted areas. And before you paint it, you want to sand this with 400 wet and just sand it until it's real smooth. Dry it off. Best bet's to use a blower to blow water out of these cracks so when you're painting you don't have water coming back out on you. Once you go to the paint stage, you'll look like this. This is a PPG base coat. It's Deltron base coat. It's mixed by 1 part paint to 1 part reducer. Sprays on real easy. It dries real fast. It's a pretty foolproof system. And once you get it painted and it cures long enough, you want to scuff it with a red scuff pad just to kind of get the shine off of it, and then you can go to doing your graphics. On these 3 helmets, we're going to do flames, scallops, shredders, which is kind of like makes the paint look like it's ripping away, and we'll do graphics on one too. But once you get to this stage, when we do flames or scallops or shredders, it's usually easier to mask off the entire helmet and actually just draw the design onto the helmet. Makes it a little easier. You don't have to worry about having fine line tape peeling back off. And then, so I'll just go ahead and, I'm gonna do shredders on this one. You just go ahead and just kind of draw your design the way you want it, which isn't, you know, just kind of make it freestyle. As long as it kind of balances on both sides. A design like this doesn't have to be exact on both sides. You just work your way all the way down, trying to kind of keep it uniform. Your design, when you draw it, doesn't have to be exact. It just gives you a guideline for cutting. Once we get ready to cut it, we'll just use a double-edged razor blade to cut the design, and then we'll just peel back the design. And then pretty much it's already masked for you once you do that. And it's pretty much ready to spray. Now that that side's done, I'll just kind of try to match up the other side as good as we can. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's somewhat uniform. Just work your way down. Trying to keep it uniform with the other side, that's the most important. As long as it's, here's this side here, as long as this side's about the same place and it looks pretty uniform in the back when you're done, you'll be set. Now what I like to do is come back and just add a few little pieces that are ripping off of the shredders to give it a little bit of depth. Those will be cut out too. Okay, and after we've drawn out the design, we just cut it out using a single edge razor blade, trying not to press too hard because it will cut into the helmet and leave a gouge. As long as you don't press too hard, you should be all right because it will be pinstriped right over where you cut, so you shouldn't have too much trouble. But that's what it'll look like once it's cut. I'll go ahead and finish cutting this side. And we should be able to have her done here pretty quick. You just cut, you don't have to stay exactly on the lines. Like I said, it's just a guideline. It just kind of keeps you aware of where it should be. I like making everything a little sharper. All this is kind of rounded. Looks a little better the sharper you can make all the points. Looks a little more realistic. You just follow your design around and keep cutting. It's always good to look at the back and kind of judge where you're at here. As long as your tips are pretty close to the whole design will look pretty good. Just try not to press too hard, like I said. This is a pretty quick and easy design. Normally something like this, if a customer was to bring it in, you would charge them probably anywhere from $150 to $175 for a design like this. It's pretty good money for as quick as you can do one. And once all the airbrushing and effects are done on it, it looks pretty good. Just follow your design around, making the tip sharp, like I said. Just cut out your little deals. You just once it's cut, you just got to peel the tape away. Just peel the tape slowly because a lot of times the tips want to peel up like that one's doing. You can use your backside of your razor blade and just kind of poke it through so you don't rip the tape. If you peel it too hard, you'll rip the tape, and that's when you'll see your razor blade cuts. If you rip the tape and have to go back and redo it, and you don't get exactly on the same line as you were. So it's important to be kind of careful right through this area. You just keep peeling. Like I said, just push it down and it'll break. Okay, we're gonna get ready to spray our shredders on the helmet. We decided to spray it. It's kind of a real vibrant purple. It's made using a Deltron mixing bank toners. This is a DMD 624. It's a deep violet. We'll add a little bit of that. It's very transparent, so what we'll do is we'll add a little bit of flake. It's just a silver aluminum. It's DMD 650. This will just make it a little less transparent, a little easier to cover. less coats when we come to do that. And the purple itself is pretty dark, so we're gonna lighten it up with DMD 673. It's a magenta toner. I'll just add a little bit of that too. Now with these toners, you have to use what's called a balancing clear to make it into a base coat system. If you just sprayed these without it, when you went to clear your piece, it would wrinkle because the balancing clear makes it into the base coat. So you add 50% of this to 50% of whatever color you've put in. You just kind of eyeball it there. And for this color, I'm going to put some Sunset Red Pearl in it. It's PRL 90. What this will do is just make it kind of glow once it's cleared. It'll give it a real vibrant look. Now once that's mixed, to thin the paint, use reactive reducer DRR 1170. Always use 1170 when you're doing graphics because it gives a quicker drying time. The 70 is for your temperature range. Your temperature range on this is 65 to 75, but I use 1170 when doing graphics even if it's 100 degrees outside. It's just the quickest drying reducer. It just allows you to work a little faster if you're doing multiple colors. Just thin that out. Always use a paint strainer. So what it does, it catches impurities in the paint and keeps them from ending up on your job. You want to stir the paint real well, make sure everything's mixed up good. Kind of see the color. It's real vibrant, real sparkly looking. Once that's done, load it up in the gun. I'm using an Iwata LPS2 paint gun. It's a environmentally safe paint gun. With the new laws now, we have to use that type of paint gun. It doesn't allow as much material into the air, which is supposedly saving the ozone. Let me get all this out of the way. And the helmet was scuffed before we lined everything out, so it's ready to paint. I use a helmet stand, which you can use a jack stand, anything to get the helmet up off the table, because when it's on the table like this, and you're trying to spray an edge, the paint wants to roll and it won't stick to this edge. You always end up with a light spot around the bottom, so it's good if we can get it up kind of eye level, at least to where you can make sure everything's painted. Okay, we're ready to paint, and just position it any way it feels comfortable to you. Just want to go with light coat. Just miss the orange. Try to get rid of the orange. Don't get in a hurry at this stage, because once you do, you may run the paint. This is a real quick drying paint. Chances are you won't run it, but if you really try to load it on the first coat, you might. So once you run it, then you got a bunch of other stuff you got to do to fix it. When you get back to your tape here, you want to be real careful not to load up the paint on the edge of the tape, because it'll collect on the edge of the tape and it'll either run off or it'll leave a real heavy edge that the pinstriper have to come back and try to hide. So you just take your time and do it. Get everything nice and covered. Once you get a good coat like that, you want to let it dry maybe 5-10 minutes and come back and do it again. You repeat that probably 2 or 3 times until the base coat's covered. Everything looks good. It's got a uniform texture, uniform flake appearance, so you don't load anything up. And then you're ready to peel everything off and have the airbrusher do his effects, pinstriper do his, and clear it. And that's it.
In this part of the helmet, we're going to start doing the actual airbrush effect. This right here is an airbrush. This is a sticker that we put on here. And nice thing to do with like stickers, you know, this is a sticker of our company, just to kind of tag the helmet, is coming with an airbrush to add some fades in there. So I have some quinacridone magenta. It's basically a mixing wall toner that I've added some balancing clear to. And I'll come in and just airbrush a slight fade from the top down. staying inside on the white sticker itself. A sticker is vinyl and doesn't need to be sanded once it's cleared. Putting it on the sanded surface or the scuffed surface, we can clear right over it. Now, besides that one fade on the top, I'm going to put a slight horizon line in to give it kind of a mirror effect. I do this by creating a real fine, thin line, kind of going across, curving up at the edges, and then bringing the fade down. And there's many ways you could emphasize this sticker. You could do all different kinds of fades or colors in it. This is just a real quick and simple way of spicing up a small sticker. So when it's cleared over, you won't know if it's been airbrushed or not. It's a little color in each of these little dots right here. Now, using the same magenta, because this magenta looks really nice over yellow, I'm going to come in and do a drop shadow. Now, I want these shreds right here to look like they're actually on top of the yellow. So by creating a shadow underneath at slightly below and towards the back, it'll look like there's a light source towards the front of the helmet, casting the shadow back. Notice how this magenta, the magenta back here appears like an orangish color here. That's because it's a transparent toner and uses the yellow underneath as a base. Now, you don't have to worry about masking this. Since this is a much lighter transparent toner, it's not going to show up significantly on the purple once it's cleared. Plus, this helmet is also going to be pinstriped by the pinstriper later. He'll come in, and the pinstripe will actually hide any of the areas that I miss around here. Again, it's just a real quick little effect that definitely emphasizes the depth of the shreds, increases the value of the helmet quite a bit. Continuing that same drop shadow. Now, the one thing you're going to notice on a helmet, since it's a three-dimensional object, and you're going to be moving around it, the light source is going to change. Now, I still have the drop shadow on the bottom of this one line here. And this is where it gets kind of complicated. As I get towards the center of the helmet, depending on how the painter laid it out, I've got a center stripe that's a little bit off center right here. So I'm either going to have to lay it on one side or the other. What I'm actually going to end up doing is laying a little bit on both, just slightly. Because now as I go down this side, I want the shadow to be on this part of it. So this one right here will have a little bit of shadow on both, and you won't notice as much as it's on the very top of the helmet. This problem occurs not only on helmets, but also on the hoods of cars when you're doing flames or shredders. You'll come to the center of the hood and have to decide which side you're going to go with. And then I continue along down this side with the drop shadow. When airbrushing, it's really important to have a good helmet stand that you can just notice how I can move it around. It's still very stable. A lot of time is wasted by resetting the helmet. You can't just pivot it and use it like this. The airbrush I'm using to do this is an Iwata HPC. It's a medium to fine detail brush that works very well with automotive paints. It has a top feed where the paint goes. This is convenient because it holds very small amounts of paint, so I don't need to mix an entire bottle of paint up. At the same time, with this cap on the top, I can move it around and the paint doesn't come out. I don't have any problem with the paint dripping on my work or splashing around when I'm moving. Just coming back and making sure all the shadows, doing little touch-ups here and there on some of them. I want to make sure the inside crevice in here where the two scalps meet is the darkest area. Notice how the more I build up this magenta, the more it becomes like a really fiery red. But I want that to be the darkest area, because actually, in reality, if these were rips coming off of the helmet and we were seeing a shadow underneath, the darkest shadow would be in that crevice. The least amount of light's getting through. I missed one right there. Another nice thing about using these urethanes to do effects with is they're instantly dry. All that paint I just painted on there, it's dry. Even the stuff I painted right here, completely dry. And you can clear this immediately. You don't have to wait at all.
Okay, for this helmet, we're going to be doing a 3-color graphic job. We'll be using blue fine line tape. It's made by 3M. On anything with an intricate design, we use this tape just because it's more pliable, it's easier to move, it's easier to make curves with. If you make a mistake, you can pull it back and it'll stick a bunch of times without losing its adhesion. It's just a little bit easier to work with. I've already lined out most of the design on this. Right now I'm just finishing up with some final details, and once I'm done with this, I'll come back with some 3/4 inch tape. I'll border everything, mask what I'm not going to spray, and we'll be ready to paint. Okay, we have the helmet that we were working with the blue tape on. It's all ready. I came back with 3/4 inch masking to border in where the blue tape was, and as you can see, it's all masked off. It's ready to shoot. I'm using the same purple I used on the other helmet. It's all mixed up, ready to go. It's mixed the same way, same toners. All we got left to do is spray her. Same way, just light coats until you build it up. This is the first of 3 colors on this one. Once we get this one done, we'll come back with blue and probably a yellow.
In this step, we're going to airbrush another helmet. We have another one of the stickers right here, the Cal Concepts sticker, and I'm going to show a little bit of a touch-up you can do to the sticker, make it look a little bit more lively. I've got some red oxide DMD 623 toner in my airbrush right now, using the HPC Iwata. I'm just going to do a slight fade from the bottom up into the sticker, just to give the sticker a little bit more depth than it was just sitting there. Now I'm also going to do is I'm going to come in on the yellow underneath the sticker and go over the Cal Concept, kind of make a circular area underneath it, add some depth to it, and then maybe do some streaks coming down. Like some rust type streaks. Just a nice effect you can do with that sticker instead of just leaving the sticker on there plain. Now the main effect we're going to do on this helmet is going to be a drop shadow for the flames. Now this is going to be airbrushed on here to not only accent the flames but to give it the illusion of depth like it's floating over the yellow. For this I'm going to switch to my other Iwata, which already has a weakened mixture of base coat black urethane. The reason I say weakened is it has probably about twice the amount of reactive reducer I'd normally have if I was shooting in a gun. By having it this way, it's a little bit thinner. I'll be able to see the yellow through it and it won't be stark black. After all, a drop shadow is not black, it's just an absence of light. So going down underneath, underneath the flame and back to show a light source that's in the front, I'm going to slowly outline our drop shadow of the flames. Now it's real careful, unless you want to remask all these flames, to not get too much of the base coat on the flame lick itself. Now when the pinstriper comes in, he can come in and touch it up and fix it. But it makes his job a lot easier if you just try and stay away from it as it is. Notice there's a slight amount of yellow right there. That's going to be gone when the pinstriper comes in. The thing you want to do is stay out of the flame itself. You want the flame to extend a little bit further, or your drop shadow to extend a little bit further than the actual flame itself to give the illusion that the shadow being cast behind it. Be real careful. Notice I'm holding the airbrush fairly far away, and as I get to the end, I move it closer. That's why I get that small taper effect. I don't want this to be a sharp line. I want it to be a gradual fade to give the illusion of just a nice soft shadow. I don't want any hard edges. Now, if you really want to be meticulous about the shadow, you can mask out a duplicate set of flames for the shadow. Just a duplicate of these, just shift it over. That's a lot of extra work. This right here is a real quick and easy way to add an effect to the helmet that definitely makes the helmet stand out from the rest. If the flames weren't orange, I might actually use a little bit of orange on the yellow for the drop shadow. Now right here you have a little bit of a problem. It's not that big of a deal, but I was having all the shadows going on this side. Now, much as the shredders on some of the other helmets that I had dropped shadows on, there's going to be a problem where you're going to have to decide which side you're going to have the shadow on. It's got to transfer over to this other side. Now, looking at the front of the helmet, this flame right here is in the center. So I'm actually going to have probably drop shadow on each side of each of these flame licks. That worked out perfectly. I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow right in here. And coming around. Now, if you get way off like this with the shadow, don't worry about it. It'll actually just give the illusion that the flame is at different heights and different levels. Remember, being very careful and trying to keep the flame, the continuity of the color throughout all the flames. You don't want the shadows to be very dark on one side and light on the other. So you may need to go back and forth and, you know, refer to the other flames to make sure the color is the same. You see, this is a fairly simple trick, and just with some practice you can really get these going fast. And there you have it. Drop shadows on a flame, and this helmet is now ready to be pinstriped. For this helmet right here, the airbrush I'm going to do on is going to be using some magenta to give some type of streak effect on the yellow. But first, we got another one of these stickers back here. I'm going to do some airbrushing on the sticker just to again, just keep it from being just a standard plain sticker. What I'm going to do here is a type of a stipple effect, which is very simple to do with the top feed airbrush. What I'm going to do is I have magenta in the airbrush right now. I'm going to load up the needle and then just splatter the paint right onto the sticker area around the orange. And some of it's going to get on the orange around it. I want that. This is a good thing. Giving the stipple effect, it just gives kind of a texture to this orange part of the helmet, as well as the sticker itself. Now, it's very important that when you're doing this stipple, these dots are very thick. You don't start spraying right away, or they'll have a tendency of spiderwebbing out. It takes a little bit longer for these to dry than the paint does, even though this is very fast-drying paint. The paint I am using is the two-stage PPG 673 DMD toner. Basically the same color as this Graphix right here. Now, letting these dots dry, I'm going to come over to this yellow area and actually create that streaky effect with the same airbrush, same color. And notice the difference in color. Because it's a transparent toner, it actually becomes like a reddish color, whereas back here it looks like a very dark magenta. I want these streaks to be very uneven. It gives a nice textured effect to the yellow itself. And by focusing on the top edge, I can end up giving it some depth to give an illusion that the yellow jag is actually a three-dimensional object. We're going to come back in with some black and actually do a drop shadow to emphasize that 3D effect. Just building up layers of the magenta. The more I layer up, the brighter the color actually becomes, and the less dependent it becomes on the yellow base. Again, working all the stripes. Very handy to have a helmet stand at this point so you can rotate it around. If you don't have a helmet stand, a lot of times a lazy Susan will work. You can just sit the helmet on there, or even sometimes a drafting chair that has a swivel base and you can lift up and down. It gives you good access to the helmet, and it's very important when you're working on it to be able to turn it around without having to reset it every time. As I mentioned before, it's a very fast drying paint. See right here? That area is dry right now.
Hi, I'm Ron Beam. I'm going to show you how to pinstripe these graphics today that Craig and Kyle have put on these helmets. First off, we'll start off, we're going to use House of Color striping paint. It works real well. These are going to be clear coated, so we want to use House of Color. I would recommend One Shot for a beginner. It's a little easier to learn with and a little easier to work with, but we're going to use House of Color on this thing today, which is a fine striping paint in its own right. First off, how to trim a brush. I've already trimmed this one, but this is basically what you want it to look like before you start striping. With a taper and kind of a blunt front like that, you get a nice clean corner. There's two basic reasons for outlining graphics like this. One is to hide a bad paint edge, and the second is to add a contrasting color to give your graphics a little more definition, a little more pop. So we'll get started here and we'll see how we do. This is House of Color's reducer. This is a light blue that I've mixed up with their light blue and white. And this is a little catalyst to make sure we don't get a reaction when we're clear coated. You work the brush back and forth like this with all three to get a good paint mixture and get the paint work through the brush. We'll wipe off our excess with our bare fingers. As far as holding a brush, I use the two-finger method. I hold it between my thumb and first finger with the handle resting against my thumb. There again, it's whatever is most comfortable for you. Everybody holds the brush differently. You can look at 10 stripers and see 10 different styles. Something very important when you start, you want to look where you're starting, but you also have to look in the direction that you're going. You can't drive a car without seeing where you're going, and running the striping brushes the same way.